Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by Spartan Forge. On today's episode, I am joined by some of my buddies, the Seek One crew, Lee Ellis, Drew Carroll, and Thomas Clements, as well as Johnny Stewart and my buddy Michael Paladino to talk about their 3 days of hunting the Pennsylvania big woods, some public land during the infamous firearms season. So this is Lee and Drew's first time hunting the big woods. So we discuss the art of deer drives and why it's not just a giant group of rednecks going through the woods, and it's a strategic plan the way that we implemented it. The buck scale, Pennsylvania deer camp traditions, Lee's first Pennsylvania buck, finding hidden honey holes for pressured bucks, Michael's buck, and what you can learn from trying new things. On this week's Mountain Buck Monday Story of the Week, we have a story from Jesse Smeltzer out of Pennsylvania. And Jesse wrote in, I bought a camp in Pennsylvania with the family in 2020 and picked a shelter wood cut on state forest land to target. This buck was one of the first bucks that we discovered. I couldn't figure him out that year and discovered he was still alive after the season. Last year, my brother and I couldn't make it up to hunt much in archery due to a Colorado trip in early November, and we made it up on the opening day of gun season. We had tons of pics of this buck and had narrowed down where he was living. My brother and I went in 200 yards apart that opening morning. At 8:30 a.m., I caught him browsing and killed him right where we were getting pictures all summer and fall. He didn't leave much. I backtracked him since it was snowing to see where he came from and discovered he was bedded between my brother and me all morning and night. No fresh tracks were coming to his bed in the snow, and he fed about 20 yards from his bed till I saw him. He was aged at 7 years old. So head over to East Meets West Hunt on Instagram and East Meets West Outdoors on Facebook if you want to check out Jesse's buck, because this thing is a freaking toad. I mean, a 7-year-old mountain buck, just big 10-pointer, and just awesome deer. So congratulations on that, Jesse, and thanks for sharing the story. If you have a Mountain Buck Monday story that you would like to share with me, please send it in to my email, beau@eastmeetswesthunt.com, or just make it easy, go to eastmeetswesthunt.com, click on the Contact Us form, fill it out, send in a paragraph or two, doesn't have to be very long, and a couple photos, and would love to share it. We've got a ton of stories that have come in from this fall. I'm still going through some from last year. It's been awesome to be able to see these stories and hear of everyone's successes. So keep sending those in. Love to hear it. But in other words, we got this week's podcast, as I said, with Lee and Drew, and I'm really excited for this one. It was a really fun time. Lee texted me a couple days after this trip and said that this was the most fun hunt that he had this entire year, and just being able to just have fun and not put too much pressure on yourself, and just enjoy an old style of hunting, Pennsylvania tradition in gun season. So joining the Orange Army, and I think that was really cool. I've been one that has always looked down on gun season as, oh, there's too many people in the woods, there's all this, but that's a loser's way of looking at it. And I think you can make the best out of it and really have fun with friends and family during that time. And that's exactly what we did. As you'll hear in this episode, there was a ton of laughs. We're making fun of each other. It was just a really good time. So I'm glad that those guys decided to come up. They will have a video coming out of this hunt on the Seek One YouTube channel. I'm imagining it'll be sometime soon, but just go over and subscribe to their channel so that you're notified when new videos come out. But I'm really excited to see how that video turns out, because it was a really, really fun hunt and experience. Last couple things I'll say is thank you to everybody that's been ordering apparel for Christmas gifts or whatever on the East Meets West website. I really appreciate that. I've had a ton of orders coming in, especially in the last couple of weeks here, and I could not appreciate that anymore. So thank you. Do not feel obligated to, but I do appreciate any of the support there where you feel necessary. The one thing I will ask you is, if you do like the show, one thing that you can do that doesn't cost any money is share it with your friends, share it on social media, just share it with people through text message, whatever. If you like it and you feel like you got something valuable of it, that's the cost of admission for the show. So I do appreciate that. And if you feel inclined to give a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you listen to it, that stuff all helps me out a ton. So thank you again for all of that. And I guess I do have one more thing, then I'll let you go. But I told everyone that's been asking about the scouting camp. So I had the Mountain Buck scouting camp last spring, and it was a hit. And I really enjoyed that. And I said, I'm doing another one this coming spring. But I wanted to get the registration open further ahead of time and give you some heads up when that's going to come up. So my goal is still to get registration open before the end of December. I have a lot of work to do to get that, to make that a possibility, get some things lined up, but that's my goal. I will send out emails. So my email list is how you'll keep the I guess, most up to date. So again, there's a little pop-up on the website at eastmeetswesthunt.com. When you go on there, just fill that out, put your email in there and your name, and you'll be added to the email list, because that's where it's going out first. So I'll give you a couple I guess email heads up before registration goes live. Last year it sold out in a couple minutes, so I'm hoping to give everyone a heads up, knowing when everything's going to happen. So if you want to get a spot, that you can do so. So really excited for that. But with that being said, we got a longer podcast here, so I hope that you enjoy it. It's a fun one. This is a good one to watch the video version. It's in Johnny's camp, so it's pretty cool. So head over to YouTube if you want to check out that as well. So thank you guys, and have a great rest of your week. I am recording already, so I'll probably leave this in.
Yeah, let me just chew it slower so it's louder.
Can y'all hear that?
What? Are you done, Lee? You done eating your Doritos? You're standing in front of the camera, Bill.
Bill. Go to your room, Bill.
All right.
It's wedding month. Of course you do.
Lee, give me the bag. Give me that.
You want some?
You know you're not old enough to have toys. Or food. Your mama raised you better than that.
I don't know.
I do. I've met the lady. She's a nice lady.
This train wreck happened all on its own.
Thomas, you have a voice for podcasts.
That I don't doubt. Thank you. I was talking about Lee. That sounded
conceited.
Huh?
A little conceited.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce the podcast?
Yeah.
Because I'm sure Beau's already played his generic radio broadcast.
Yeah.
Pre-recorded intro.
We're gonna
It's East Meets West. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, we're gonna work on that later on. Me and Beau, we're gonna make him a new one.
Yeah, I like that.
Maybe this could be it.
It could be.
You have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the East Meets West Hunt podcast with your host, Beau Martonik.
That's amazing. That was so good.
You pronounced his name wrong, though. That's the only problem.
No, he said it exactly.
It's pronounced Beau.
Oh,
No.
Beau?
Yeah.
Beau Martonik.
Man, I love that voice, man. I wish I could do that.
Oh,
Do you want to introduce everybody here, Thomas?
I mean,
Start with yourself.
sure. My name is Thomas Clements. This goober to my right is Lee Ellis. And on his right, we have yours truly, Beau Martonik, and then we got Drew Carroll.
That's exactly what we were looking for there. So I'm not going to go any further detail on Drew and Lee. They've been on the podcast multiple times here, Seek One. And Thomas happened to be out here filming these guys. And you know what? He's kind of my favorite out of the group. So I wanted to get him on the episode here too as we started talking. So we're in Pennsylvania. We're at Johnny Stewart's lodge, not deer camp. Lodge, we're gonna call it. What would you say, Thomas?
Oh yeah, it's a lodge, 5-star.
5-star.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving it a 5-star deer camp. It's still a deer camp. Johnny, don't let them give you this lodge, nonsense. It's deer camp. It's deer camp vibes.
Yeah. Oh, no, it definitely is.
You just say lodge, and it just has a disrespectful feel to it.
That's a good point. I won't call it a lodge anymore.
I got your back, Johnny.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. 5-star deer camp.
Thank you.
And you guys got to come up and spend some time. So I was highly concerned when you guys were interested in coming here of making sure that you had a good time and enjoyed yourself, because Pennsylvania deer hunting is a little bit different than other places. But I feel like you had a good time, even though that there wasn't a ton of deer sightings overall. Well, maybe I'm completely wrong. Everybody's like silence.
I think the biggest treat for us is that, and I think I was telling Johnny this a lot, that like maybe it was you, Beau, I can't remember, but for us, like we're always so landlocked. Like our style has always been the door knocking permission game, and a lot of times that's smaller properties, and it's like, you're really having to pay attention to those lines. So it's really a treat to get into just like a zone where you can just kind of just adventure and just like go and not really have to like worry too much about property lines.
Yeah.
And to us, that's a huge treat. So it was a very different style, but also at the same time, as you and I learned this evenings, there's a lot that translates over.
Yeah, there is.
From the suburban, smaller lots, door knocking game, and it translates directly over to the big woods game up here, public land.
Yeah.
So it's extremely different. I mean, total opposite ends of the spectrum, but there are a lot of similarities of just how these deer are really good at sort of finding those pockets that are overlooked, and just they're always really good at avoiding pressure. And the same thing happens in the suburbs. The same thing is happening out here.
Yeah. Oh, especially during gun season when they're dealing with
the Orange Army.
Yeah, the Orange Army. Oh, that's how you were supposed to open this, Thomas.
No, we got to save that one later on. We got to save it.
That's for the video.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, not good enough for the podcast.
That's either going to turn out, that intro to that video that we filmed today is either going to turn out like hilarious, or it's going to be a total flop.
It's definitely not staged. That's live action.
Not even a little bit. No, I was just standing with the camera out in front of 8 armed men walking through the woods.
So I'm gonna start with Thomas on this question, and I thought of this, and if you could say in one sentence how you describe hunting the big woods of Pennsylvania the last 3 days, how would you say it?
There you have it.
Yeah, just no. I won't say calculated. And I feel like that's a little different, because if you see the video and you see everybody just calling it the Orange Army, everybody out there just running around chasing deer with shotguns and rifles. But the amount of time that I seen you and Johnny and Lee and Drew and all that looking at your phone and planning how we were going to do these drives, or how you were going to go in on this piece of timber and this piece of land and use the topography and all the creek drainages and big timber patches and stuff like that to help navigate and do stuff like that. Like, I mean, like, we may have only been in the woods pushing deer for 30 minutes, but we spent 45 making the plan to go do it. So it was way more calculated than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good way of describing it. It was more than one sentence, but I liked it.
Well, it started as one word.
One word. Then I had to
elaborated.
give you the reason why I picked the one word.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm telling you right now that I might actually retire from podcasts and let you take over.
It doesn't matter what you say.
It's just
the
funny.
sound that you emit. It just sounds legit.
It does. I believe everything he says. All right, Lee, what would you say?
I would sort of piggyback off of the calculated word, and then I would just probably say like repetition. And it was like game plan after game plan after game plan after game plan, and 90% of those game plans failed, but that one is all it took for it to happen. And it was like, I mean, kind of demoralizing at times when it's just like we go on a drive, nobody sees a deer. We go on another drive, nobody sees a deer. Maybe someone saw a doe. And it's like, it can get you down quick, but it's like, I think keeping that positive attitude is everything of like, it's the next one. Cause like you get enough repetitions in, like sooner or later, everything's going to align and it's going to happen. And then that's kind of what, like, I'm really glad that the way it played out for us was like, it was a grind, first full day, second full day, didn't happen. And then like the last day of hunting, it happened. I think it just kind of showed like the whole process of it, that we didn't get lucky and it happened on like deer drive 1 or 2, that it happened on like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And so I just think like, kind of like Thomas said, you're making these calculated plans and it's like, all right, go bang them out. Like just kind of keep chipping at it. And we did some longer drives and I think we kind of landed on the shorter drive technique. And I kind of like that because you're just I think you're keeping yourself in the game and just like
you just keep banging and keep hitting and kind of moving there. The problem with the long drives, especially with a low amount of people, like some Pennsylvania deer drives can have up to 20 people, which is insane to think about. But like when you have a couple drivers and a couple people sitting, there's a lot of places for those deer to, as I call it, squirt out, and get back. And so like when you have a longer drive, there's so much more room for them to do that when you set up these shorter, more calculated ones that they see. And we were kind of learning on the fly, even though we've been doing, my dad's been doing it for 40 years, in gun season, but it's like you learn every time you do it and you just keep making these little fine-tuned adjustments.
And I think these deer are really good at squirting out of that plan. Like this is a common, technique here. And I think that those deer are just accustomed to it. And like, this isn't their first rodeo.
Yeah.
So I guarantee you every drive we were around deer, but they were just dipping out on us like one way or the other because they just have kind of figured out the deal.
Yep.
I had something important I was going to say. I don't know what it was.
Okay. We'll let you think. We'll let you think on that. We'll go over to Drew.
I mean, I think what I was going to say is covering ground and just repeating until you essentially get lucky. I think the driving method honestly shows like that these deer, anything that you do that's unnatural to them, they know what's going on. Like they know the game. Mm-hmm. And whether it's you're going in and sitting in a stand and you're hunting their food source, like they know that something's up, or you're walking through their bedding area trying to push them, they're not going to just go the direction that you want them to go. Yeah. And I think what Lee just said, like, I think we were around deer probably pretty much every drive. And whether they were just hunkering down and not moving and just letting you walk by them in some of this thicker stuff where you have guys that are 150, 200 yards apart, or they're just squirting out the side because they know that if they go the direction that you want them to go, they're going to run into somebody else.
Yeah.
I think it just, you have to be way more calculated than you would think. It's not just a bunch of rednecks walking through the woods.
Yeah. No.
That,
and I think that's what people think of deer drives. They think of just running through the woods, trying to just, kick deer up and do that. And it's like, they're way smarter than that. Like they're used to this. They're not going to just do that. And I think a really good example is the first drive. So you and Thomas were set up on the first day, and it was just me and Lee putting on the drive and you and Thomas sitting on that. So there was just a few of us. It wasn't this, big giant, a lot of people drive, and we were moving. And I remember saying to Lee, I said, we were pushing through this old clear cut and through this thicket. Nothing came out at that point. And I said, let's stop and skirt around and come back through this one little section of blowdowns. It was only 70 yards from us. And I said, I always find sheds in there, and deer are laying kind of in that spot. And we did that, and that doe jumped up from me 15 yards away. It took until
But when she took off like a rocket.
Oh, yeah, she didn't like that.
Gone.
Yeah, she didn't like that.
I remember the important point I had. We definitely got to have 20 guys next year. Yeah. We could do it, man.
Yeah.
What's the actual rule on that? It's like per hunter or like per party? You're allowed how many guys?
Per party. What, Michael, do you know what it is?
Well, what if two parties are just coordinated in the same area?
That's what I'm
25?
saying.
Yeah, And it's over a certain number, and I've never had over this number to be able to do it, but you have to have a roster basically, which we had just anyways, but where you write down as far as who's in your party and you have all that stuff there. And
you have to write down, 25 guys.
I don't know the exact number.
It's 25. Yeah,
25 guys.
Yeah.
You can have 25 guys stomping through the woods.
It's including sitters.
Can everyone have a gun?
That sounds safe.
Boys.
Yeah. And
You get a gun and a shield.
And I will say, like, so I actually got, when I started posting some of this stuff on Instagram as we were going through it, like at the end of the day, a couple people had asked, they're like, I'm scared to death of people in the woods with rifles and you're, walking towards them. And like, so the way our method is, like when we're doing these drives, is we use a yipping system, which Lee started getting better at. He wasn't very good at first, but like yip, you do a little yelling as the drivers are going back and forth. That's one way to be able to keep.
What was so wrong with my yip?
It kind of sounded immature, to be honest.
Yeah.
Kind of like
2-year-old.
Not even. No. This was a button buck type stuff,
And
and
a yearling.
yeah. So, and that was kind of like. Anyway, sorry, I got off track thinking of Lee's. Yep, but that helped. It helps keep you in line as you're moving as drivers and making sure no one's getting ahead or doing anything. But it also is a way so that the sitters hear you and they know where you're coming from, know where you move. And we also plan it out. We grab, we get, when we're looking at Spartan Forge ahead of time, we show everybody, we send the pins where everyone's going to be sitting at, where we're going to be coming from and driving. And it's like, okay, we have sitters in these places. You don't shoot in that direction. That's what it is. And everyone knows where that stuff's at to be able to keep it, I guess, safe as you're moving through it. So
I think that goes back to Thomas's like calculated word.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. Like, I didn't really realize how much went into it. And yeah, I mean, when you're involving rifles and people walking through the woods, you could potentially have a dangerous scenario. But I never once felt like not completely safe with the plan and what was going on. And that was y'all's experience in that and kind of being able to like pass that down to us. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the yipping is key to just kind of letting everybody know like what's going on. And it was, in my opinion, like as safe as you can possibly get.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. And we've learned that for so many years. And I was glad that, I mean, you guys picked up on it really quickly as far as like, at first there was some things that I realized I took for granted as far as like putting on these drives and like, we've just done it forever. So you just know, and you guys all asked very good questions, and that helped me realize like, okay, yeah, not everyone has done this before, and it's completely different. I mean, I think if you did that in Atlanta, there'd be a problem. There'd probably be.
I think it's something we need to try for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Atlanta's gonna have to be archery, but there's some other cities that allow rifles. We could probably just push them through little neighborhood creek bottoms.
Golly, that would be a disaster.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of deer though.
There would be. That's the thing too that kind of shocked me was like y'all's deer have to crap a lot.
I was gonna go.
Dude, I don't understand. That's the craziest thing. Like when we're doing these deer drives and we're walking around, there's literally crap everywhere.
Yeah, deer poop everywhere.
Like we have high deer densities in some of the places we hunt. Wasn't even comparable to some of the places we've seen.
And this is low deer density.
Extremely low.
Yeah. Well, Johnny came up with an idea on this. Lee, do you remember what Johnny said about that?
It was they're eating bark
in browse.
They have to eat a lot of it.
They have to
in order to get the nutrition, the calories.
And it just passes through them.
I mean, they got to be pooping every like 30 seconds.
That might be valid.
Walk 10 steps, take a crap. Walk another 10 steps, take another crap.
Because there's not that many oak trees out here, right?
No, not that many. But actually, Lee was mentioning, and he's like, Bo, look at that. He's like, that deer crapped right on top of that log. Like just
the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
It's just like perfect
precision.
Perfect precision pile on top of that log. And there was that one doe this morning on one of the drives we were putting on. Well, we didn't see her, but I saw where she was at, and it was kind of steaming. But she had diarrhea, and I caught her in two different places of the mountain. It's
Dang.
just I don't know what she was
Keyed
eating.
into that
feel for the
diarrhea
old
there,
gal.
It was a bad morning for the old girl.
Yeah. Yep. And it was not a great morning for her. I mean, she was up late and
Yeah.
low sleep, eating fast
Got
food.
into the Mexican last night.
She got into the Mexican food last night, those burritos.
Yeah.
And
The burritos.
Thomas, talk about them burritos.
Now, every time that we ever meet anybody new that I haven't been around, Lee likes to tell the story saying that I don't even know what a burrito is.
You don't.
And I did know
That's a
what
fact.
a burrito was, but when I first met Lee and Drew, I'd never had one. Just because I was a plain Jane type guy. I was pretty picky back then.
Plain Janes have had burritos.
Well, I'm
That's
a
just like
special
if-
kind of plain Jane. I'm not. I didn't. Anyway, and I have since ate a lot of burritos.
So you're a burrito guy now.
I like burritos.
Burritos.
You just had a
Steak, chicken,
an eye opening later in life on burritos.
burritos. No black bean burgers though. Burritos.
oh, I love that story.
It's the perfect dynamic for us because like Drew and I grew up in the city, and Thomas just has like the most country accent of all, and it's just like the perfect blend.
I'm jealous of it. Like I would love to have
got a little
his
man crush?
accent. What? Man crush? I couldn't understand you with your city accent, but no,
You're
no,
really
I
good
just,
at talking trash.
I
Did
guess,
everybody tell you that?
what's did I
That
tell
you're so good. Like that hurt when you told me that. That was a
Yeah.
sick burn. Here, give me some skin, brother. That was a sick burn.
snail?
Dang it, man.
Mason taught me that one. But yeah. Anyways, what?
While we're just talking about nonsense, I want to put Johnny on the headset and ask him those questions I asked you earlier in the car
Okay.
about milk and cows and
Yeah. Okay.
okay.
All right.
We'll do that at some point.
All right. Well, no. Let's just do it right now before we forget about it.
Okay.
Johnny, you want to come over and grab Thomas's headset real quick? Sorry, Thomas. The problem is
Milk
we'll
and
never
cows.
get the headset off Johnny. That's the problem. No, he's got to be on camera. He's got to get in. He's got to get in the middle here. Sit. Check.
All right, Johnny, you ready?
Yeah, hit me.
Spell the word silk.
SILK.
Say it 3 times fast.
Silk.
What do cows drink?
Water.
Dang it, man! Oh gosh.
Oh.
I think I heard that. A 10-year-old run that by me and I failed.
Oh man.
So I was ready for it.
I failed that one earlier.
Bo fell at Fort Hook.
No,
line,
that's
and
not what
sinker.
you. No, that's not what you said to me. You said spell
Spell
milk,
milk,
and
then
you said
silk.
MILK, and you said spell silk, and I said SILK, and then you said say it 3 times fast. I said silk, and you go, what do cow drink? I said milk.
And then 3 minutes later, you finally realized what was going on.
Yeah, we were all laughing. You had no idea why we were laughing at you.
Yeah, no, I'm not that quick.
Do you like fish sticks?
Yeah.
You do? You're a gay fish. You like fish dicks? I didn't get you on the milk
I don't
one,
like
but I got
eating
you
them.
on the fish dick one.
You did get me.
Don't even let him take credit for
What,
that.
what did Bo say today? Had a T in there at the end of the road? At the end of
Amongst,
the word?
or no,
Crossed.
crossed.
Across.
They make fun of my accent. Thomas made fun of my accent.
That's ironic.
Well, he's like, why do you add a T to everything when you say like
Yeah.
across? I was like, we come across the creek.
Across the creek.
K-R-I-K, crick.
That's not how you spell it.
That's how you say it.
No. Anyway, it is a creek. If you read it, it's creek. That's just, I don't know. That's the way we've learned that in Pennsylvania. But anyways, all right, back
Moving
to
on.
back to deer hunting. So, we were putting on those drives and kind of going through the calculated approach with it, and it was the first day I had taken you guys into an area that is what I would call one of my best areas that I have, and all that was seen was Drew and Thomas saw a small. Well, I guess you run with that.
Yeah, in the first 5.5 minutes of our hunt, which in hindsight I probably should have put a little bit more effort into trying to kill that deer. But
Okay, so
it was a legal buck.
The scale
barely legal.
That's what I was going to ask. The scale that we've established now, where does he fall on the scale?
He was probably right above barely.
I was about to
So he's a
say
meat
he was
buck.
just below meat buck.
Yeah,
But above a barely legal.
I mean, Thomas didn't see him, but
I didn't, but I could see it in his eyes how big he was. He wasn't very.
yeah, he
far
was.
out.
So he was bedded underneath one of those hemlock trees. Like it was a small one that had kind of like a really tight canopy.
Mm-hmm.
And when he got up, Thomas and I both heard him. Like he almost bounded off like a mule deer, just like hopped off.
It was loud,
You know,
real loud.
I was like, "Gosh, dang it! Like that's him. That's a big one."
That's the big 8.
Yeah, that's big 8.
Big 8.
That was Johnny's big 8.
Big 8.
And he kind of like bounded off to maybe like 70, 80 yards and turned around and kind of looked back. But that was the only buck that I saw.
Well, you saw one later in that day. You saw that 6 point.
Well, the only one that I saw that I potentially could have shot.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's go back to the scale real quick. So
It's a beautiful scale.
the scale is actually pretty good. So you have barely legal, which in Pennsylvania, depending on where you're at in the state, 3 points on one side is the antler restriction limit. So that's barely legal. It hits that. Then you have a meat buck, which it's decent. It's a
Step above barely legal.
Yeah, it's a good looking buck.
Maybe a 2-year-old.
Yeah, 2-year-old buck. Then you have a good buck. Well, that's a good buck. You look
So that's
at
a
it.
good
You're
buck.
like, you look at it. You just see it there on the ground. You're like, that's a good buck.
That's a good buck.
It's a good buck, man. Congratulations.
Maybe a 3-year-old at that point.
And then you have a great buck. And then there's the once in a lifetime buck that we've added to
Correct.
the 5th tier of the scale.
I definitely think there's more additions that can be made.
Yeah, but this is the start. This
The
is
building blocks.
Yeah.
So would you say yours today is a good buck?
Yeah, I think we all agreed it was a good buck.
Yeah, it was a good
Yeah.
buck.
Being for real, and I think Michael said it best, was that like that's like a very good, or maybe Beau said it too. I think both of y'all kind of said it, that was like a very good representation of like a good Pennsylvania deer.
Yeah, and we're jumping ahead a little bit here, so I'm going to step it back, and we'll get back to your good buck.
Fine.
And I just kind of want to go through this process a little bit. So, after that first day, we put on a bunch of drives in these areas, and we kicked up some deer, but weren't kicking up the caliber of deer that I know that live in there. And I'm sure we were walking past some of them, or maybe that they'd completely moved on. And the hard part about gun season is, especially getting the second week, is you don't know who's been in there before. You don't know where they've been, what they've been doing. And everything you learned in archery season and, your quote-unquote patterns that you put on them, that don't matter anymore. Like, that's kind of thrown out the window. So you're trying to figure out basically off the pressure on what these deer are doing, because they're in survival mode and they're trying to live. We get into the second day and we start going to some of Johnny's spots. And I think we went a couple drives without seeing a single deer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Johnny don't know what he's doing. That's the main thing. But no, obviously Johnny knows
As we
what
sit
he's
here
doing.
underneath 14,
Yeah.
15 mounts.
Yeah, obviously Johnny knows what I'm doing. I'm completely joking. And but then we got into a drive where my dad and Johnny came across this, and myself came across this hilltop, and Drew and Lee and Thomas were kind of in position, and it was towards the very end of the drive, and we were sitting there under a tree, and Thomas and Lee decided they were going to try to play a joke on me. And I see Thomas set a camera down on a backpack, kind of angles
It's my favorite part of the whole trip.
I know I'm throwing myself under the bus for this, but I feel
I
like
respect you for it, though.
It's necessary because people are going to see it at some point.
Repeatedly.
So I see this camera pointing in my direction, but myself, I didn't pick up on the idea that, okay, Thomas probably turned this camera on, is going to try to get a reaction out of me. Obviously, hindsight's 20/20. I'm like, he just set his camera there. I'm being kind of an idiot doing little things looking at this camera. And their whole idea was they were going to joke and say, big buck, and get my reaction. Well, what really happened was 4 deer came off this point. And Lee, I'll let you take it from there.
I don't get it, man. It's just like, it's kind of like a watch pot will never boil. Like, whenever you least expect it is when something happens. And like minutes before that, I told Thomas, and we've been sitting there for an hour, and I'm sitting there just like tentatively watching. And I'm like, we got to eat a sandwich or something. Like, we got to stop paying attention. That's when they come out. And so, yeah, it was hilarious because Drew and Beau did a push, and then they met up with us. And I told Thomas, I was like, hey, I'm going to play a prank on Bro. Like, I do that kind of to a lot of people. And it's kind of it's kind of a dick move, to be honest with you.
I kind of like it. It's
but
fine.
It's all for good fun. And, we've never hunted together before. So I was like, hey, I think it'd be a good idea, like, film Beau. Like, we're going to do a big buck prank on him. And so I don't even know how you worded it, to be honest, but like,
Well, we sat there discussing it for like 2 minutes because I was like, if I just stick the camera in his face, he's going to know what's up.
right, but then you set a
So
camera
I was
up.
like, let me get the picture camera because he ain't going to think I'm filming him.
Did
with
you
that
tell
one.
him anything about?
No.
You just set it
I'm
up.
just setting it right here. I
And
said,
you had no idea that this was becoming a setup at this point. Just a random camera is being fixed
No,
to you.
I just thought Thomas had too many cameras in his hands and he needed to set one down.
Yep.
At my face.
So when you gave the smile, wink, and peace sign, you didn't know
I had
it
no
was
idea
recording.
it was recording. No.
No, I just jokingly told him, I said, say hi to the camera, Beau.
So I said hi to the camera, and at that point, 4 deer came running off the mountain.
So it literally, I was like, hey, let's play a prank on Beau. I'm going to tell him big buck, and we'll film his reaction and see what he does. And then we set the camera up, and literally I turned to my left and look up this hill, and here come 4 deer come crashing down the hill. And the last buck was a legal buck. I'm pretty sure he was a legal buck.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably my favorite video clip of all time, because you go from like completely joking, like,
Goofy.
to just like very, very stern, serious, like this is business. Like,
Yeah.
just like,
I grabbed
dead
my
serious.
handy cam because I was going to get a second angle. I was going to get the second angle, and I grabbed my camera, and I'm looking at it. And the video clip,
It's hilarious.
it's
We were
pretty
just all
funny.
laughing about it in camp. Like, all of us were surrounded around Thomas's computer watching it, all dying laughing.
I'm looking forward to when that video comes out. But anyways, we were kind of going through and in our own heads, so we got, me and myself, Johnny, and my dad, and we're all trying to come up with plans of thinking of it and working with you guys on these plans and kind of getting everyone's thoughts, because even though we know these woods and this is what we grew up doing, I think it's important to have everyone's perspective. And we're sitting there looking at it and trying to figure out plans, and kind of you always get to this point of feeling like, all right, I'm not exactly sure what we should do in this situation. And we're going through it, and last night we were sitting around trying to come up with some different plans and looking at the wind and figuring out how we can do these drives and going through it. And I guess at that point I'll transition before we go, and I keep jumping around a little bit, but I thought of something. Then I brought you guys out to my family's deer camp to have a night there and get to see where I've grown up getting to hunt and everything. What was kind of your thoughts on that? I don't know, I guess getting to see kind of like the smaller deer camp, no running water type of deal, and hanging out with everybody.
I could tell there's a lot of memories there, for sure. You had all the pictures printed out on the wall. I guess Grandpa Martonik is the one that is he the one that started kind of the hunting tradition in your family?
Grandpa Cherry. So that's my
Grandpa
mom.
Cherry?
My mom's father at that camp. Yeah,
He started the hunting tradition and the mustache tradition.
He did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's evident.
Yeah. He has a way better mustache than I do.
No, it was cool. I mean, it's like your stereotypical deer camp, wood burning stove, rice coal, which Lee and I have never heard of that before. That was a first for us.
Yeah, you're either burning hot and having to take off everything you're wearing, or you're cold. So there's two options with that.
But no, I mean, it was everything that you need in a deer camp.
Mm-hmm.
You got a cooler, you got a wood burning stove, you got a kitchen table for people to eat and share stories over, and you got plenty of wall space to put all your good bucks, your meat bucks, your barely legals.
Yep. And you guys actually put a rule on. So my aunt had brought up some cookies for everybody, and Mason was eating too many cookies. So Drew made a rule for Mason. He had to eat so many celery sticks
to cancel out.
Yeah,
to cancel it out. So
that's scientific fact.
Mason ate all of the celery so he could have some more cookies.
Those cookies were life changing.
Oh my gosh! I think that's why we killed
so
deer
good.
today.
Yeah,
I think that's why we killed today.
Yeah,
They didn't last long.
Yeah, my aunt, my cousin, they baked those cookies up.
Yeah. I would second what Drew said. Like that deer camp was like full of memories. All the pictures, all the deer heads and stuff. Like you can tell there's a lot of like, not to sound mushy or whatever, but like a lot of just like love for what we do in that cabin. Like it's just a very, very special deal, and you can tell that like the second you walk in.
Yep.
And it's just cool to experience that, even though we have really nothing to do with it.
Yep.
I think that's something that's very different than what Lee and I typically are used to. I mean, we're hunting urban areas where the vast majority of people don't hunt, and then coming up to a place like this where I would guess that probably 90+% people do hunt.
Yeah.
And for 50% of those people, like, hunting is a lifestyle.
It runs deep here.
Yeah. And it's like the activity to do. So it's cool to kind of just see that side of things and just see the lifestyle and the camp is just like the social atmosphere for people to get together and share stories and have camaraderie around that hunt. And like, I think that's a lot of what these deer drives, what makes these deer drives fun is it's like, it's not about going out and killing the biggest buck you possibly can. It's not about spending all summer patterning a buck and like just going in there when the wind's right. The most important thing is just like getting out there with buddies.
Yeah.
Having some fun. You're going to screw some things up. You're going to cut up. And then you might have an opportunity where you get to shoot a deer with your buddy watching you. So that just the community aspect of it is something that we don't get to experience as much in the urban.
Everybody was a part of that deer.
Yeah.
I just happened to be the lucky dude that got to pull the trigger. But like everybody put effort, an extreme amount of effort and time into that deer. So that was a joint deer. I mean, that was like a party deer. It wasn't like that's my buck. It was like, that's everybody's buck. I just happened to be the lucky guy that was, in the right position when the deer took off running.
Yeah.
But there's just so much, of a group effort that went into making that happen. That's just such a cool deal. And I think that's why it's made, these few days like so special for us, just because like you said, it's just outside of our normal realm of what we get to experience hunting wise.
Yeah.
And the camaraderie of it is just like almost everything.
Oh, and that's why I was so excited for you guys to come here, and like I'm proud of that like aspect of it. Like and all of us that are at that camp, we're the same as you guys. Like as far as during archery season stuff, it's a very kind of solo endeavor, and you're focused on it. But it's like when gun season comes in, it's like, all right, who has a tag left? Let's see how we can help them, fill their tag. Let's, everyone kind of gets together, and I've done that with Johnny, I've done that with Michael, I've done that with Mason, I've done that with my whole family, like in the past, and today when we went in and we were going to do a drive, and it was one of my dad's spots, and it's actually a place that you guys were kind of laughing at this picture of me at the camp last night, where little 13-year-old Beau,
Baby Bobo,
little stud there, he was had blonde hair, and I'd killed this 8-point, and I was saying it was right after the antler point restrictions. At that point, it was I think 118-inch 8-point, and I remember everyone telling me, they're like, that's the biggest buck you're ever gonna shoot in your life. Like that's a giant. Like you got to be proud of that deer, and obviously I was, but that was that same spot is where we went to put this drive on this morning, and it was me and my dad and Michael went to push across this top, and I owe this to my dad of knowing that area so well and understanding how the deer move through it. And as soon as we started the drive, we heard a gunshot, and at first I thought it was Michael because he was kind of down in that bottom, and then Johnny texts just Lee with like a bunch of E's after it, and I was like, all right, well, that was Lee that shot, and we kept moving on the drive. And I remember I got into this bottom, and it was like the most Pennsylvania big wood spot you could think of, like just beaver ponds. It was misting, cloudy, kind of rainy, just looked just big wood style, and it almost looked like a place where a moose would live. As I think, Thomas, you were saying that like jokingly, you're like, "Is there a moose in Pennsylvania?" Because it looked like this would be a place that they'd live at.
Yeah, Drew brought that up.
Oh, Drew brought
we kept
that,
walking around in the swamps and stuff, just expecting.
It kind of looks like the big woods of Maine.
Yeah,
a little bit. Very swampy.
Yeah,
wet, big woods.
And we walk up, and I think I almost fell in the beaver pond and got beaver fever a couple times as I was trying to run across and see you guys with that deer, and we went up, and not that I didn't expect it to be as nice as it was, but at the same time I wasn't sure what it was going to be, and like, holy cow, it's a good buck. And
I feel like you were totally expecting to see like a
old barely legal
just laying there.
I kind of was, and I was like, that's a great 3-year-old buck, and Pennsylvania 8-pointer. Like, it had strong brows, nice looking deer just laying there, and we were just, oh man, it was just awesome. Everyone hanging out there. My dad came up and Michael came up, and then all of a sudden the whole crew came over. Johnny came running in, and then Drew came after that because he was in a different spot over there, and everyone got there, and my dad broke out his traditional fireball for celebration.
Wait, so
there.
that's actually a real tradition? That wasn't just
No, that's a real thing.
for the camera?
No,
Okay.
that's a real thing. Yeah. No, that's a real thing. My dad always
From
does
my
that.
perspective, the coolest part of the whole deal was after the shot happened, and Thomas and I were standing over that deer, was just like, we were excited to see people emerge from the woods because like everybody had heard the shot, I'm sure, and it's just like, here they come, like, oh, here comes Johnny, like, here comes Beau, here comes Joe. Like, it was just so cool, like, to just like people just started kind of converging on it. And again, it's just like the camaraderie side of it, but like that was just such, for me, my perspective, like that was the coolest side of it for me, was like just watching everyone kind of converge and just appearing from all over the place.
Yeah.
Just like,
Well, part of that, what you said earlier, Lee, is like there's almost an added pressure when you have that many people involved. Especially like for us when we come up here and we got invited on a hunt. We got guys that are local that have other things they could be doing, and they're out here for 3 days driving deer for us. And you have a high pressure situation of putting a good shot on a deer that's running at 150, 200 yards. It's not easy. You made a great shot on that deer. Like that was not an easy shot.
yeah, I didn't really, well, thank you, but I didn't really think about that till after the fact. I was like, I'm glad I didn't think about it because I felt like I probably would have had a lot more pressure on me. But also at the same time,
to think about it in that situation.
You don't have. It was an instinctual kind of deal. I mean, it's like split second kind of deal.
Deer stops 2 seconds.
Right.
You want them, shoot.
But also, like, I wasn't sure deer actually existed up here, so we didn't really have any expectations going into that hunt. So it's not like we were nervous. We're just like, oh, it's gonna be another hunt. We don't see anything. But yeah, I kind of thought about that after. I was like, man, I'm really glad we made a good shot on that deer because everyone's got a lot of time and effort into this, and I don't want to be that guy that had the opportunity and just blew it, just totally dropped the ball.
Well, you did make a hell of a shot because, like, it was probably about 200 yards, and that deer stopped for a split second, and that's when you were able to put the shot on. And luckily, Thomas has the good eyes, and he saw those deer coming across that swamp because it's hard to see. It's thick, and it's just they're not making noise coming through that soft ground as they're walking through there, and yeah, I just couldn't believe it happened that way.
Yeah.
And there was another buck in the group, too.
The lead buck was a barely legal buck.
He was a little bitty feller.
Yeah.
He ran right up to Johnny, but he was sleeping. He's not even here to defend himself.
I think something that goes under the radar a lot is, and Thomas, this is an appreciation for you, is like, if Thomas doesn't capture that moment on that camera, we don't get to share that with everybody. And like, so my hat's off to you and what you were able to do, like as a part of the whole group. Like you did your job in a phenomenal way to capture that, because it's like, you know, if it's just a split second deal, and like you were able to get right on them, and it's like if you weren't able to do that, a lot of people don't get to see that and in the realness and kind of how everything unfolded. So like there's a big weight on like camera guys too, and like I think sometimes they don't get enough credit for when they do a really good job to kind of capture these moments, because it's like, I mean, in the day and age we live in, it's like, oh, you know, picture or didn't happen, you know, kind of thing. So like you did a phenomenal job for that, and like a lot of people will hopefully get to enjoy that and feel like they were a part of that hunt.
Yeah, no, thank you. I don't know, it just becomes instinct. It's like you said, when you pull up to shoot, to get on a deer to make the shot, it's the same thing. Like, I don't, after doing it just for the short time, like you don't watch things on your eyes anymore. You watch it through the monitor. So as soon as I see the deer, it's just finding it in the monitor, and you know, sometimes you get lucky or whatever. But I think the way that the hunt played out is a testament to what you was talking about earlier. Both of you talking about the deer squirting out or being able to figure it out because they've been hunted so much. Because they kind of figured out is like, we hadn't been set for 10 minutes and those deer came barreling down through there. And y'all were a long way off. And it's just like, it showed me proof of like, we were probably in deer the whole time, but they're so in tune with where they are, and they're so used to being on their toes. When people, as soon as people get in the woods, they know what's up. They know you're there. They know where to go. And
yeah,
like,
isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like those deer squirted out and ran there when we were all the way on the top of the other hill. And my dad said that he told us that would happen because he's used to, he knows this area and how they kind of react. And it was funny, and why I had so much confidence going into that drive was because of the way the beaver pond's laid out. My dad goes, they have 4 places to cross. And basically they came out in front of all of the sitters that were there, just depending on which spot they came across. But it wasn't like they didn't have as many options as they did in other areas. It was kind of like they funneled down through there because they're not going to swim across the water. You know what I mean? They had to find those little funnels and come across, and that's exactly, you know, well, basically where I had to cross in that spot, and that's where those deer came out through there. So that was pretty neat.
Did y'all see the deer bust out?
No. We had no idea that any of them had busted out at that point.
That kind of gives you a perspective of like if you're just typical stand hunting and you're walking into a set and you don't have good access, like you're witnessing what's going on when just any other dude walks into the woods and blows deer out of a bed. Like they're not just. I mean, I don't know. I think some of these mature bucks will just get up and very slowly walk off so they don't get seen. But the majority of the deer, they're like freaking in the next county.
Yeah. Well, you just made a really good point. So think about like, because we are on purpose accessing with our wind blowing in that direction. Like, and we were quite a ways away when they took off. How many times do you go in your stand if you're being lazy and about access or whatever, and they're gone before you even know it?
Yeah.
You know, and you didn't see a deer, and it's like, oh, why didn't I see a deer? Well, maybe it could be because of that access. So that was
something that you were saying earlier. Well, that first drive that we did, where it was just you and Lee pushing, and Thomas and I sitting in a pretty much like flat area. The whole area is pretty much flat. There was a couple clear cuts, select cuts. You still have to know how these deer are going to use the terrain. Because you're not going to just be able to funnel them into one spot and sit there and be able to shoot them. Like, they're going to get up and they're going to go follow, you know, an edge.
Yep.
Or the path of least resistance. Or they're going to go towards the thickest cover. Like, you have to be set up in the right spot because you can't just go. You can't shoot 200-300 yards out here in most spots. So it is very calculated in that regard as well, especially when you only have a few people pushing and there's not a whole lot of topo in the area.
Yeah, because you guys got to see a variety of terrain too. Like, you got to see extremely flat big woods, and then you got to see some really steep stuff that was difficult walking, but that that helped kind of funnel the deer a little bit. I mean, we didn't see any deer because it was one of Johnny's spots, but I'm just joking again. But
where are you sleeping tonight, Beau? Because I don't think it's gonna be here.
No, I'm going home. No, I'm joking, but but you see how the terrain, is there's such a variety in here in Pennsylvania, and it was.
I do feel like we saw it all. I do feel like we got a full Pennsylvania experience.
Yeah,
which is how you want it to be. Like, I know that you can always have that beginner's luck. Like, I mean, Drew, you totally could have in the first 5 minutes shot a deer, and we wouldn't have gotten like the full experience of it all. So, like, I think it is a huge blessing that we did kind of get to, like, go through the whole process and kind of experience it all. It just kind of made like that moment that much sweeter.
Yeah,
when it all kind of happened. But it would have been pretty sweet if you did kill one in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah. And how about then?
We'd have been like, "Oh, this is easy. What are you talking about? All this hype."
Tame big woods pub clan deer.
Yeah, and then you got to see how we get them out of the woods, where we hide over the bank and wait for no traffic, and then hurry up and run and try to throw the deer in the truck and
We
get
do the
out.
same
We are
stuff.
very used to that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's not out of the ordinary.
that's par for the course.
So nobody sees you as you're trying to get it out, and then after that we got back to Johnny's camp, hung the deer like 30 foot in the tree, and Johnny's way of hanging it in the tree. It was funny because we just kept pulling. We weren't even.
I didn't even think about it at
No, I
first,
didn't
and then
either.
all of a sudden it clicked in my mind. I was like, "That deer's really high. How are we going to clean that thing?"
Yeah.
And then Johnny finally was like, "Bears." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, it made sense, but it was funny. We got it all the way up in the tree, and then it was like, all right, now it's time. Who's the next person? We got Drew with a tag, we got Michael with a tag, we got Johnny with a tag. Like, let's keep moving, and we just kept going the rest of the day and working on it, and then so then at the end of the day we kind of split up a little bit. So one part we left out of the story was last night. Lee and I were driving out. It was like rated dark, and we saw a nice buck standing next to the road. And we kind of looked at we dropped a pin on Spartan Forge, and we're looking at the map, and we're like, okay, where is this deer going? He came out there on his own. Maybe he's going to be in there again. So that was the plan, to have Drew and Thomas go in there, and Michael and Johnny, my dad, went to another location, and Lee and I went on a piece to not like we wanted the deer, that buck, if he was coming from the direction we thought he was, to kind of move naturally. But then at the same time, we're like, we can also be productive and do a little bit of walking on this other side, and maybe bump this deer across, over to where Drew is at, and we were almost productive with that.
It almost happened. It was the right plan anyways. I mean, I kind of laugh at it because it was like right up Drew and I's alley, right behind houses.
Yeah, it was too.
And I kind of, it makes sense now when you told me later, like, Lee, I was extremely uncomfortable. There's cars driving around. There's like, you can hear people at their houses. I was like, this is just another day.
Yeah.
And because you were hanging like way back away. You didn't want to come towards me at all.
I didn't want to walk anywhere near that. I don't do well with that. I don't do well around people.
But that goes to the point of kind of what I said earlier, is like some of the stuff that translates over is like, these deer are very, very good at finding where they are not being pressured, where they can avoid humans, where they've never had a human experience. And I think sometimes it's the same deal in the suburbs. Is like, sometimes it's in those extremely overlooked places where, some guys want to have the 20-acre properties, the bigger, acreage and stuff that people door knock for in the suburbs, but it's like, man, sometimes it's that couple acre block that everybody drives by and nobody ever goes in there. And that buck is somehow kind of, found that little area, and his whole life, no one's ever gone in there and messed with him. And like, that's his home. That's his home. And I feel like kind of what we stumbled on today, seeing that buck yesterday, is like, I don't think anybody looks on a map and is like, this is the place we got to be. There's definitely a buck in there. But I think it's one of those places that someone drives by 100 times, but nobody ever goes in there.
No.
And it's just, they're really good at finding those little sanctuaries.
And that was a learning thing for me, from the standpoint I'm always looking at terrain features, and I'm looking at how the vegetation is lined up and all these things, and it's like, all right, when it comes down, especially this time of year, like when you got pressure, it's like they're trying to survive. They're looking for their best place to survive, and if there's no human pressure in this little block, then that's obviously where they were hanging out at. And as we walked through there, we got up close to the road, and again, I'm uncomfortable, so I'm standing back. I'm looking at that road out there, and some guys drive down the road, and they start yelling at us. They saw our orange through the tree. And they're like, he went that way. and Lee walks up right up to the window.
Yeah, I just started moping. Oh, he went where? And just like started walking right up to the truck, and you're still just like kind of just hanging back in the woods. And
just kind of looking like the guy they put in the closet their whole life. Like, I'm just kind of looking.
I think those dudes are definitely trying to shoot that deer.
I think they were too.
Let's be real.
Yeah, I think they were trying to shoot that deer, and they're like, yeah, they were stopped there, and the does ran across the road, and the buck hung back, and Drew and Thomas were just across the road, not too far in, and we're like, just need that buck to go across there. So we were trying to move across, and we were checking to make sure he didn't cut back on us, and I don't think he did. It's just still at the same point, like where you guys were set up, like you have to be able to they have to come in that range. Something can move 100 yards from you. You're not going to see it. That's just the nature of this.
Yeah, meanwhile, Thomas and I are laying in a ditch in the middle of this, 4x4 road next to some railroad ties. Thomas is asleep at this point, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I was catching up. It's hard work out there.
I'm just laying there. And, yeah, I mean, we were probably 400 yards from the road, and we didn't have phone service, so we didn't know what was going on. I could see, 60, 70 yards in both directions down the road, and then we had this swampy clear-cut thing that we could see, but we ended up getting up and just started walking towards the road, hoping we'd bump something. But
yeah, and then at that point, so obviously that plan didn't work out, but then Lee got a little bit of cell service, and he's like, someone got something, in our group, in the other group, and Johnny texted something about we got blood. And
Sweet Mayo, that's what he texted.
Sweet Mayo, yeah, that's what he texted you. And we're like, holy cow, either Johnny or Michael got something, and then it was we were pumped about that, and I don't know, Michael, would you? I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but do you want to jump in? Tell the story about it. Thomas, you mind? Let's have Michael jump in. So we get a text as Michael, my dad, and Johnny are hunting a different area. Michael, do you want to kind of tell what you guys had going on? So hold on, actually, sorry, Michael. So you guys will probably you'll probably remember Michael from the past. Michael Paladino, one of my best friends from high school growing up, been on a lot of Western hunts with me. But we talked about it tonight. I don't think we ever whitetail hunted together.
One time, probably when we were maybe 16 or 17.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but anyways, so continue, Michael.
So when we split up, I went with Johnny. We were running down this road because Johnny's in a hurry to get to where we need to be. So we're full sprint running down this thing pretty much, and we kick Joe off, and he gives very specific details for Joe and told me to go down here, and he goes, go down the line, get to the pines, and stand at the big tree. I was like, all right. I go down the line. I'm like, this is the big tree I'm supposed to be at. And he goes, you're going to see a big buck. I said, all right, sounds good.
Big 8.
Yeah. Nope. So I said, all right, see ya. So I head out, and there's a doe on the line. I'm like, this is going to be pretty good. I get set up, and I could hear deer coming. So I was getting ready, and I'm aiming at them, and I could see racks coming through the woods. At first, I only saw one, but then I saw the second one, and they must have caught my wind, which the wind wasn't never blowing that direction, but they picked up their pace getting towards the line, where that's just something they were naturally doing. But they started running. I was like, oh, man, this is not what I want. So I hold on the first one, and he's big. I was like, dang it. And the second one comes out. He's much smaller. But like that thought process goes through your head. I'm in Johnny's spot. Joe's pushing for me. If I'm letting these deer just run by, why am I sitting here? I was like, meat buck. So I shot him. And I just knew that picture in my head was, man, that's probably brisket. But I found blood, and we tracked him out a good long ways and got a hold of Johnny, and he texted the group, told him that, hey, got on blood trail. And we ended up tracking this dang thing like 560 yards, and it was tough. It was clotting up, and we ended up realizing we were jumping him, and we just kept moving him, knowing it was meat hit. So I kept bumping him, but we ended up finding him and got him out of there. About a mile and a half, actually.
Yeah, you ended up hitting him in the shoulder, and he went a long ways. But
yeah, I killed his front shoulder, and it came out. It was quartering away, and he came out right in the front of the brisket low, so he bled real good. But it's not what you want to be doing at 5:30.
Yeah, and then I came in, so my dad called me. He's like, or he had a voicemail because I didn't have service, and he's like, I was coming in to help track, and I didn't know you got it at this point, and then I saw that it was like buck down, and I was like, oh my, yeah, and he's like, bring a deer cart. I was like, too late. I'm already almost there. I was like, we'll get him out, and then you guys had made a meat pole.
Yeah.
So anybody listened to, I guess it was a podcast I released at the beginning of November, I was getting made fun of talking about this meat pole that we used. My dad was the one that came up with it in Ohio, but you put a pole essentially, normally underneath the deer, but you kind of had a hole there that you put the pole through.
So this one specifically, Joe said we need to keep the chest cavity as close to the pole as possible so it doesn't swing. And when we were looking, we had a long ways out, which a buck on a smaller caliber, you probably should shoot a lot closer to the road. But I didn't care. So yeah, we ended up getting him out, and it was pretty easy. We had about 80-yard drag to a tram road, and we took the tram road out and met Beau, and it actually carried really well with two people.
Yeah, so you basically put, so I'm showing it for anybody that's watching the video version, but you put someone gets in front and someone gets in back, and you put the pole on your shoulder. What's that, John? 10 feet long. It's got to be 10 feet long. Yeah, somewhere in that range. And then you put it on your shoulder, and as you're walking out, and it was funny because my dad sent me the pins and where to park and where you guys were at, and I was like, this is a mile and 3/4 back. It was a haul.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was a mile and 3/4 back to the actual pin that you guys sent. So it was a long ways back in there, and I'm walking back in, and I was actually talking to Mason on the phone, and then I saw the headlamps coming, and met up with you guys and everything, and got it out. And then for a while, Michael and I were carrying it, and then we passed it off to John and my dad, and we were obviously throwing some old jokes because the young bucks were standing back there not carrying any weight, letting the old guys
shit and just chit chatting, and they're doing all the work. But I did want to say one thing on this specific setup on this drive. You guys were talking about how specific you got to be on these. For this specific setup, all he wanted Joe to do was just very slightly walk through the woods and just get deer on their feet. And we were just kind of working this area, so we just wanted to get deer on their feet. So this one wasn't so much of a really drive. It was just more...
It was almost kind of a wind bump.
A little bit. So when I shot the first time, Joe said, I think he said he was 700 yards from me. And those deer were running. So those deer were... they were bumped from, how many 100 yards away. Like, that's pretty impressive to be like, those deer decided. And the way they came, they took a huge blowdown and they crossed the lead line against a blowdown. I just so happened was on the side to see where they came through, and that's right where that trail was. They used that backdrop to you're only seeing from one side, and it was wasn't really a drive per se, but we knew we were in a spot where there were deer, and we just wanted to get deer on their feet.
Yep.
So
yeah, no, that was awesome. So basically, we had 2 bucks down in one day, and being able to see that come back to camp, having them both hung up there, just like awesome. Getting to see Lee's first Pennsylvania buck, and I did want to say back is like Lee has killed. Lee and Drew have killed some like giant bucks over their lifetime, and seeing the fact that Lee was just as excited about this buck, at least it looked like it, as any buck he's ever.
That.
No,
yeah.
you can't fake that.
Actor.
I'm joking, but as any buck that he shot was like super cool to me to see that, and like just and be able to understand that, and then Michael shooting another buck is like, so we had 2 good bucks at camp, come back and getting to hang up and be able to hang out at camp, and we got a bunch of people here, and I guess we'll call them the audience out there that's watching. Bill's surprisingly quiet on the recliner over there. Bill Thompson, Spartan Forge showed up.
I do want to say one thing. When we were walking in on one of the first, actually we were walking on one of the first drives, I said to Drew, I said, the one cool thing about this Pennsylvania drives is you got a group of buddies, you're all sitting there hunting, and within 5 minutes, every single person's at your deer. I was like, that's something that you don't get doing any other style of hunting. Like, Pennsylvania deer drives is 100% just based on your buddies and getting a good group of guys together. And the goal is to fill tags, obviously. But days of no deer sometimes are just as funny because you're ripping on each other. Somebody's probably went down and got hurt somehow, like did something. It's like just a funny, comical thing, and it's all the time. So not seeing deer is actually expected. And when you do see a deer, you're like, we're the best team out here. In reality, we put 1 deer at 9 drives.
Yeah,
but that is 100% how it occurs, and it just is a bunch of miles in 1 drive that works.
Yep.
And you're like, yep, we're doing this next year, same drive, and
yeah,
you don't. But
today was definitely a special day.
We said it this
sure.
morning. I was like, you're killing deer today.
And after day 1 and 2, I wasn't so sure. Today was epic, and something I'll kind of say too, like from this is just kind of complimenting you, Johnny, is that like I look up to you for how you are selfless with your hunting. Like you tell Michael, like, hey, go down, like almost like I'll be in the seconds, like you go have the hunt, and it's like go down to that tree. This like you're gonna see a big buck. Like you could have easily been like, hey, Michael, go to this, scrub spot, or just sit over there for a while, and you go to that spot. But like you sent him there, and like I think that's a really cool thing, and something that I think is not prevalent in the hunting world today.
100%.
That there's a big selfish sort of mentality, like, and the fact that you are the way you are, and like how you hunt, and especially with how you treat your friends and how you hunt with your friends. Like I look up to you in a huge way for that. I think that's a very, very cool thing that you do that, and it's like I can genuinely tell like you are as excited and happy for someone else when they have success as if you were to have it. And that's just a really cool thing. I've been meaning to tell you that for a while, and I just wanted to take a second to share that. I thank the world of you for that. That's a really cool thing for sure.
Johnny's one of the first people I met that was like this, actually. So my friend group, everybody pretty much knows the friend group here. We're never like really there to be filling tags for each other. That's just something you don't do. Then I meet Johnny, and Johnny's like, I got a spot for you, and we're going to put a big 9-point in front of you. And doesn't he do it the next day to Beau?
Yeah.
I'm like, he goes, I got a 9-point. I know where he's going to be. We'll go sit on him. I just need 1 push, and this deer's going to get on his feet, and we'll kill him. I was like, that's pretty cool. That was my first experience to see it. I'm like, not only did he tell you he's going to do it, he told Beau he was going to get it to him. Now, that is to say that it probably never will happen like that again, but he was just as happy to send somebody else into the premier spot that he told you was going to happen, and he was pumped when it was dead. Like, I'm like, dude, it's not your deer. And, my goodness.
Honestly,
so this has turned into a Johnny pat on the back, but I thought that was pretty cool.
No, the moral of the story is get more friends like Johnny. They're few and far in between. And actually, there's only one of a kind, John. So one of a kind.
I need to get Mason to start being a little bit more like Johnny with the spots, because
that way you don't have to do your own scouting.
once I get into that Mason database, you're going to see big bucks down.
So, yeah, thanks what you said for the kind words early. But I think I experienced shooting deer enough over the years and having success on public land and shooting big bucks and this and that for, 20, 30 years, I guess. And it's like I want other people to enjoy and see that and harvest them animals, and especially the guys like you guys and everybody that's here are guys that want it, and I feel like you guys deserve it. So it's like them are the people that, need to harvest them deer. I think I enjoy hunting now, but it's like I don't want it like I did 10 years ago. And I get sense at it myself. Like I come up short a little bit, like, because I've done it in the past and I've harvested deer and I've seen it, been a different state or whatever. And it's like, so then you get guys here and I just want them to like experience that, especially when they have that drive. And then me being around guys like you that are driven and want it, it like makes me want it even more, So it's like we feed off each other, and then when you guys are wanting, both smiling, just like the video of him joking and he sees that deer. You see how serious he gets? He's serious as a heart attack. Like that is a legit. We talked about it in his car today. I'm like, and Beau wants it, He loves doing this, and he deserves all the deer he kills, and it's like them are the people who deserve to have them animals, and like talking about putting the drives on today, I think I was like, I even felt pressure. I'm like, I want these guys I want everybody to have success and get a deer, and it's like, when I'm actually let down a little bit that we don't see deer, I'm like, I'm kicking myself, but being around everybody that is like-minded, wanting a deer and hunting hard, then you learn off of them people. Everybody puts their 2 cents in. Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of a long drive. We should have did this. And then my gears start turning, and I'm starting to learn more, and it's just, that's what I enjoy about, like, following these deer, is just learning. I think it's that learning curve that I enjoy, not so much killing, because, that's been done, but...
Check that box. Yeah, I think it's cool to hunt with people from different backgrounds and just different experiences, because whether you're, no matter what your experience is, whether it's my experience is from hunting the suburbs and yours is big woods, like there's still things to be learned from each side of it that translate to both worlds.
And then like you and Drew, like you guys are coming up here, you're putting yourself out there to learn more. If you learn a little bit from someone in every state about deer hunting, you'd be the best deer hunter in the world. And you guys are always wanting to grow. It's not like you're not selfish. You don't want to just like hunt a big buck. This is me. It's like, I love hunting. I've shot big deer. I want to experience different types of hunting. I want to learn from other people. And I think everybody in this room is that way. And it says a lot about you guys that are just like, we are average guys. You guys are average guys that are doing above average things. But when it comes down to it, you're getting above average from just being out there and being with other people and learning from them and just not thinking you're someone else, or that's what I like about you guys. Like, you guys are deer hunters. That's all, like everybody else.
And when I'll say about these guys are like when. And I was talking to Lee about this in the truck. It's like, all right, if someone looks at what Lee and Drew do about the suburban hunting, it's like, oh, how's that going to translate to hunting the big woods? It's like, actually, it does translate when you have people that work extremely hard at something. It don't matter where they're good at it. When they want it bad enough and they're willing to put in the work, they'll figure it out. It might take a little bit, but they're going to figure it out. Like, that's just what it is, and that's just the nature of those types of people. Whether it just depends where you grew up. Like, and that was another thing Lee and I talked about was like when we were driving down the road, just like, all right, yeah, you grew up in Atlanta, so that's what you put your effort in, and that's what Drew put his effort in. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. That's where I put my effort in, and it's like, and you start, but if the roles were reversed with the way our personalities are, we'd probably be doing similar things in those environments. I'd probably be 200s everywhere, honestly.
Just a full wall of 200s.
I have to ruin every good moment. But
No, I think one of the coolest things about the position that Lee and I are in is being able to hunt with guys like you and Johnny and your dad. And it's almost like a snowball effect because we figured out kind of one little niche of hunting, but that's put us in this position to go hunt with guys that have figured out their own niche of hunting. And it just keeps compounding on top of it. Like, we get to learn in 3 short days a small fraction of what you guys know and what you spend a lifetime learning up here. But, like, just gathering these little bits of information from all different environments and being able to put all that together. And, I mean, all those little pieces of information, they work everywhere else. Like, just because we know something about a deer in urban Atlanta doesn't mean it does. Some parts of that don't apply up here or out west at Kansas or wherever else. So it's really advantageous to be able to hunt with guys like y'all. But it's also, I mean, I wasn't fortunate enough to kill a deer this trip, but honestly, like 100% honest, me saying this, like, it does not matter to me at all that I didn't kill a deer. Like, I was just glad that one of us killed something and we were able to get an episode and show people, like, just y'all's tradition, y'all's style of hunting, and have success, and just going out and experiencing a different style of hunting. This morning I think it was this second or third drive, Thomas and I kind of like walked down to the river for about 10 minutes, and I guess it's like a big creek, basically. Creek. Yeah, creek. We went across to this little ditch to the creek. Big timber, it's like all misty, there's moss everywhere, just like this picturesque, serene river. And I just stood there for about 10 minutes, and Thomas was kind of getting some B-roll and some pictures. And just like that moment in itself was worth the trip up here for me. Because we don't have that back in Atlanta. Like, we don't get to experience these types of woods. And y'all, you're probably used to it from hunting up your whole life, but just seeing different things like that and just like nature that has not been molested. Like, there's little pockets of it up here. It's just really cool to see.
So, like,
and I don't care that I didn't kill anything. Like, just being up here and being a part of it was worth it for me.
So what you just experienced, like, if y'all came to Atlanta,
the leaf blowers,
the dogs barking,
it's amazing.
You'd probably be sitting
I
there
love that.
This is beautiful.
But I don't know. I've got and this was one point that I wanted to, and we're not going to really have time to dive into it super deep on this podcast. But I just wanted to say, like, I've admired that you guys were willing to kind of like break down those walls in yourself and kind of branch out a little bit. Mm-hmm. You know, Drew, especially with you doing some of the Western stuff, and Lee with you kind of going to different states, and both of you, North Dakota and then Kansas and Pennsylvania, and like completely out of your realm. And it's not like your typical thing, but like it's, you grow as a hunter, as a person, you get to experience those things, and you honestly kind of put yourself out there as it make yourself vulnerable.
Yeah, it does.
In those
it's a bit
cases.
of a gamble, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's like there's so many rumors out there of guys saying like, "Oh, these guys, they're just killing tame urban deer." Like, they wouldn't know how to go kill a big woods public land deer or an elk in 500,000 acres in the middle of nowhere. And I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Like, there's a lot of differences in it. But when it comes down to it, like, a wild animal is a wild animal, and they know how to survive in their own environment. And I don't care if it's a neighborhood or a giant crop field that's separating 2 blocks of woods. Like, they're going to use those terrain features the same way anywhere. And they know how to survive, and they all have the same instincts. And while there's going to be learning curves across those different habitats, but there's still that core just knowing how animals operate and knowing how to use terrain
and be willing to learn it.
Like, and honestly, I think persistence is like the biggest thing that separates guys that are successful every year from those that aren't. Like, there's so many guys that go out there and they see people like Lee killing giant deer, and they're like, "Oh, I want to do that. Like, that's awesome. I'm gonna get a spot. I'm gonna run a camera." They run a camera, they don't get pictures of anything. They get a picture of like a 110-inch deer, and then they're just like, "Oh, this is just not for me. I just didn't get the right spot." Like, getting to that point and then just persisting past it and just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing until you finally find the spot, you find the deer, and then you sit 20, 30, 40 times. Like, that's what it takes to, kill deer animals like this.
And
consistently.
you go in the battles of your own mind of like, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
all those things, and like, and especially you try something new. I mean, I remember that was with me with elk hunting the first time I did that, and took me 4 years to kill an elk. But I was so determined. I was like, I'm going to figure out how to kill one of these animals.
Like, nothing will stop you.
Yeah. I remember that last year that I killed it. It was like, I put everything in. Like, everything was on the back burner of my life. More things that I shouldn't have put all those things on the back burner, but I did. I was just like so focused on doing that. And it's like, I see that trait, whether it's toxic or not, within all of us.
It's a sacrifice for sure.
And it's not everybody's willing to do that, and not everybody should, but it's if that's kind of what your goals are, you got to understand that's what it is. And I think it's cool to make yourself vulnerable. I guess the moral of that story is to make yourself vulnerable and try different things. And
it's the only way you grow.
Yeah, and you're going to fail and you're going to not do well all the time, and that's okay. It's just learn from it and keep going.
We definitely appreciate your compliment there, and kind of like I said, like, it's definitely a gamble on our part to like branch out outside of the suburbs and experience, big woods hunts, public land, or just different, the Kansas was real open country, spot and stalk kind of stuff. It was a gamble because like there has been a, just a notion of like, oh, those guys are, suburban hunter hunting tame deer. Like, they don't know how to kill like real deer. And it's like, all right, well, let's go prove our skills. Like, the skills we've learned in the suburbs, let's go show that we can do that. And it was a gamble because it's like, all right, let's go spot and stalk in Kansas. Let's go try and kill a mule deer. Let's go try and kill an elk. Let's go to some public land in Pennsylvania with Beau this year. Let's go to North Dakota. And it was like, if all those were flops, it might have proven that point. Like, hey, you probably should just stick to the suburbs. But I think that, like, what Drew said is like the persistence of it, when there's just like nothing will stop you from achieving a goal you've set in your mind. That's like one of the biggest things. Like, you can figure it out one way or the other with enough dedication and time and persistence. Like, you will figure it out. And when there's just no quit, like, you'll find a way. And so
it might take you longer than somebody else.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's fine.
It took me 4 years to kill an elk. Like, that's, but I was like, to me, it's like one big run-on year. You know what I mean? It wasn't like there was a failed season there. It was like, as long as I don't quit, it's just one continued thing, just working.
If you never quit, you're going to accomplish your goal.
Yep.
At some point.
That persistence that Drew talks about is what I say about wanting it. If you want it so bad, and if you believe it, you will see it. And then you guys have that. And like the learning curve that Drew talked about, I don't care if you're hunting in a urban area or up here, we all have that. That's hunting a certain animal or a new area. There's that learning curve. That is the hunting that we're doing. The habitat changes, the deer change from year to year, the deer die off, new deer move in. It's that learning curve that we're all chasing. There's a learning curve no matter where you're hunting, but it's the persistence, the want, how, what are you going to do to do it? And it's like just being around you guys and, you guys make the statement, but I think that's you guys make the statement. I don't know. You guys know the area, but I look at you guys like I want your input because I relate to you guys because it's not like when I talk to other hunters, I'm like, what do you think? And they look at me like, well, you're the big hunter. Like, I don't know everything. Yeah. And when you have that attitude, you're going to learn more from other people. If ignorance is all knowing, if you think you know everything, you know what I mean.
You got to be a sponge.
There's different perspectives. Like, I mean, the spot where Lee killed his deer today, it wasn't off of our input, but I think that would have been something that we could have brought to the table, is saying like, well, maybe don't look in these big woods areas where you think other people aren't going just because it's hard to get to. Maybe look by the camps and the houses because people suspect that people are shooting them off their porch, or the deer aren't going to hang around there because there's too much activity. Like,
it comes back down to pressure, like you guys even said it. And I was over here shaking my head when you guys were talking about it. Find out where they're least pressured.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's in
it could be the weirdest
suburb.
places.
You guys are looking for that same niche that we're looking for up here. And if you had time, you guys can do what we could, like Beau said, you could flip-flop, we would be able to, because you want it, you're persistent. And, but yeah, that's the thing. Like today where Michael got his deer, the last few years in PA, we had snow. Right, Beau? Right,
yeah,
for
we
season?
did.
So I learned here on this hunt the last couple of days that the areas we were pushing today, the other day, there is no snow. There hasn't been snow. So the environment is pretty much brown, rain, dull. Like a deer can blend in anywhere. Now, the last 2 years, we had snow. It's that contrast. And I think the deer moved to different areas because they could sense that. They could feel that they're vulnerable. In the last few years that I've been hunting, I'm relating to them last 2 years. That spot ain't good because the snow is down. I ain't seen a buck track in there. But the place we went today where Michael got his deer, we had gone back, or we had gone through there the previous day to push, me and Joe, and for the group, and just walking back the gated road is muddy. I'm really observing. The ground wasn't frozen; it was wet, muddy, and it has been through the gun season. It's a gated road; everybody accesses through there. I'm like, look, Joe, there hasn't been many boot tracks through here in the mud. I said, and I just started getting like anxiety, like I start feeling it, and we went so far and started to push. There was a fresh scrape. There was deer shit. I said, there's a big buck. There's a good deer, and I could sense it. So we put that drive on. It wasn't successful. We seen some deer, and then we broke up into two groups today, and I just wasn't sure to where to go. It was just three of us, and I said, we just need to go back that road.
You kept saying that. You kept talking about that spot all day. You're like, that spot. I need to get back in there. You're like, and sometimes you just gotta trust that gut feeling. Like, you don't know why all the time.
And
but
then,
it's just like,
where do we go? Where do we go? Joe's like, where do we go? And I don't know. We just need to. And it was a gated road that we had to go like a mile back for that push. And we went about 3/4. I said, we just need to get back there. So we got to figure something. I'll figure something out. Let's just get back there. And Mike made a reference. He said, I got a 300. I just put me on a pipeline or a power line. I can see. I said, no, and then a light bulb went off. We were halfway back here. And I'm like, there's this right away. I said, Mike, go down on that right away. And it like, the stress was off me a little bit because you got 6-8 guys. You're trying to get deer. You're trying to know where the deer are and organize a drive, know the wind. It gets stressful, and you want these guys to be successful. And it was like the weight was lifted from my shoulders. I was like, you could see 300 yards. I'm like, well, me and Joe can kind of parallel that gas line, zigzag. I have a gun, and he could I said, just move deer, Joe. You know what to do. And it worked out, but going back to the contrast of the snow and where we are now with the brown environment, that area that Joe bumped that deer, like the last 2 years I've been through, there was snow on the ground. And you could see, like for most of this area, you could see probably 100, 120 yards. And you add snow to that, you're looking at 170, 180, and the deer, they're not in there. So like in my head, I was like, I wasn't hitting them spots because the last few years there was snow. Like the deer ain't in there for some reason that they're not. But it was like, they're not in there because the snow has been down and they feel vulnerable. That they can be seen, so they move to other areas. But so as soon as I got hiking through there, and I actually told Michael, I said, if you see a deer, it's going to be a big buck. I can just sense it, feel it, But so
I think what makes you part of what makes you such a good deer hunter is we kind of talk about like a positive attitude that kind of like keeps you going, keeps you in the game. It's like I think you're so good at like visualizing it happening. It's like every spot we go, or like so many times when we're in the woods, you're like, analyzing everything, and you're just like, oh yeah, like there's a buck, working this area kind of deal. It's like you're like visualizing it happening, and you have such a positive attitude, and that like it like keeps the engine going of like keep going, we're on this trail, like we're in the game. It's a pretty demoralizing feeling when you kind of feel like you're out of the game, your attitude's out. It's just kind of you're not in a good spot, and I don't feel like that's a good place to kill deer. Like it just doesn't ever seem to happen.
Yeah.
And like I think that is part of what makes you such a good deer hunter is like you're visualizing it happening, and like that's kind of what keeps your wheels turning until it finally does happen.
Yeah, and it's the experience you put in that area, the knowledge you've gained, to where your sixth sense will turn on because of these experience and the knowledge you've gained over the years. Then you start sensing it, feeling it, and it's like, it's like, I feel it. This is good, and it is because all your time in the woods, all your cameras you run, reading the maps, dropping pins, being there, seeing deer in different areas, and it's just like you get into an area where deer are where they need to be, and it becomes to be like a sixth sense. You can feel it, you could sense this is what they need to be comfortable and be in this area, and then that's when it starts turning on to you're like I start like breathing heavy, like I'm
I was about to say it's like to the extent where you're getting buck fever before it even happens.
It is. And you put enough time in the woods, what
he
them,
just senses in the presence of the big eighters. He's just
he's here. At Big 8, he got 10 square mile range, so I feel it everywhere.
When Johnny kills this deer that he refers to as the Big 8, he's going to. It's just when he does, I'm throwing the biggest party that you've ever seen because
you probably throw it here too, huh?
I'm throwing it at your place 100%. But like
all the listeners are invited.
Yeah, everybody's invited.
We'll put the address in the description.
And they can join our army next year.
Yeah. But Johnny's like he's talked about this deer so much, and we joke about it just because we like poking fun at each other, but like I could see it happening where Johnny's gonna kill the Big 8, which no one's really sure what this deer is. I mean,
it's a ghost, is what it is.
It's a ghost
apparition.
Dude, I was dying laughing this morning. We're making all these Big 8 jokes, and we saw the smallest rub that's ever been made in America. And Johnny's like, that's that Big 8. I probably need to put a camera on that. I started dying laughing.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
But he pointed out that one tall rub. I'm like,
yeah,
that is the Big 8. It was about 5.5 foot tall. He felt it. Lee felt. He had a little chill up his back.
A little tingle in his loins.
That's him.
His plums.
Yeah, he had some blood flowing. That's for sure.
Whoa.
But anyways, well, I could go on all night with this, but I think we should end this episode. I think it's went on long enough. We got the audience here. I'd like to talk to them a little bit, so I think we should end this. Do you guys know when the episode's going to launch, or
hopefully
2024
as
probably
soon as possible?
That's right.
As soon as possible.
If we're wrapping this up, I think we need to end it on a high note. And talk about how your girlfriend killed the biggest buck in history, in your family history, potentially. Ex-girlfriend.
Do we really need to talk about that?
Have you talked about this on your podcast?
I don't think I have.
Okay. You need to.
No. You say what you got to say and let's end it.
Beau's going to pull the cord, pull the plug.
I got nothing. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be, I fully expect this part to be edited out.
I don't edit anything, so go ahead.
So I can say anything right now.
Chugs his beer, the rest of his beer.
Open floor. I can say anything.
Whatever you want. Don't make me edit things, so start talking.
You backed yourself into this corner.
I feel like it's best I just bite my tongue. I'm going to do
Lee,
the polite thing.
I don't get.
I'm going to do the mature thing.
Well, you can't say that and not just finish what your thought is.
No.
I'm okay being burned. Like it's not gonna.
No, I have nothing to burn you with. I was just thinking of saying something ridiculous and outlandish, but
I thought it was very selfless of you, Beau.
What?
Well, that's one way to look at it.
What's the other way?
You live and you learn.
Yep. Don't be like Johnny. And
all right.
Anyways,
all of Beau's people out there, you got to push him to tell the ex-girlfriend story about the big 170-plus deer. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, it needs to happen. It needs to be aired out. The world needs to know.
Maybe
At
on
least in my
another time.
opinion, it does.
With that being said, thanks for coming.
That's the best. You leave him on a cliffhanger.
Should we get Thomas back on to close it out?
Yeah.
Yeah, where's Thomas at? Is he? What happened to him? He's showering.
Oh,
Aw,
man.
dang it! I really did want to have
Bring him a
in
headset
close
in
it.
the shower.
No.
Hey, we need you for a second.
All right, Bill. Do you want to close it? No.
Oh, come on, Bill.
Bill gave us the middle finger.
Bill's we have a grumpy Bill here.
All right. Well, I guess we'll just close it with that. Check out Sequon's YouTube channel because the video is going to be coming out here shortly. Follow along with them for everything else and all the channels, all that stuff. They're half decent guys, so I'd highly recommend checking them out. Hardworking dudes, and I thoroughly enjoyed the time with you guys, and I can't believe it's only been 3 days. It kind of feels
It's been a journey.
It's been at least a week and a half.
Yeah, it feels. I don't know how to take that, but I'll ignore that. No, just John. How about you close it out here? We're ready to end it.
Yeah, well, it was a great hunt we had here for the second week of deer camp, and I appreciate everybody coming here. I mean, that's why
We kind of invited ourselves, but thanks, Johnny.
yeah. I appreciate you guys inviting yourself, but I gave you an open invitation. You guys are welcome here anytime, and that's kind of why I built this place. So, anyways, that's it. No,
Hey, the Big 8's still out there.
Big 8's out there.
He ain't no barely legal buck. He ain't no meat buck. He ain't no good buck. He's a great buck.
I think we got to add. I was thinking about we got to add to that the next buck above that.
Next tier.
The lead buck.
No.
No,
I got a lead buck lined up. That's a monster. Lead buck.
Not deserving.
No.
But anyways,
The Big 8's.
no, I appreciate you guys coming up and everybody here at camp. I mean, that's what it's all about. And I mean, over the years, I'm sure we'll have a lot more times like this because, we all love deer hunting. We're all like-minded and it's good times.
Yeah, no, I appreciate these two, and Thomas, for coming up and putting trust in us to have a good time and taking time out of their schedule and away from families and everything else. Like, I truly do appreciate that. And Johnny, thanks for having us at your camp again. Really appreciate it. And
Why don't you plug your OnlyFans and then we'll sign off?
yeah, you can. I was gonna get real raunchy. I'm gonna stop. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.